I'd only been living with Ethan for 2 months, but it already felt like we'd known each other forever. We met through a mutual friend who needed someone to take his place in a lease, and on paper, we were a good fit. Two guys in our mid-20s, working in the same part of the city, no clashing schedules, no drama. Ethan was easy to be around. Too easy, maybe. He had that kind of personality that made people lean in without realizing it. Quick with a joke, naturally confident, and just enough charm to make you feel seen. He wasn't trying to be magnetic. He just was. And he was straight. I knew that from day one. He didn't hide the fact that he dated casually, or that he liked women with a certain type of laugh or a certain kind of eyes. The apartment itself was modest. A small 2-bedroom with paper-thin walls and a kitchen that always smelled faintly of coffee and whatever Ethan had decided to cook after the gym. We fell into a routine quickly. Late dinners at the kitchen counter, shared playlists on lazy Sunday mornings, the occasional movie marathon when neither of us had plans. It was during those small pockets of time, when he'd be stretched out on the couch in a worn t-shirt, or leaning over the counter with his hair still damp from a shower, that I'd catch myself looking too long. He wasn't just attractive in the traditional sense. There was something about the way he carried himself, completely unself-conscious, that made my thoughts drift to places I knew they shouldn't go. I never acted on it. I wasn't reckless, and I wasn't naive enough to mistake friendliness for something more. Still, Ethan had this habit of blurring lines without even realizing it. He'd lean close when he talked, clap a hand on my shoulder a second longer than necessary, brush past me in the hallway with the faintest touch. One night, we were sprawled on the couch halfway through a ridiculous action movie neither of us was really watching. It was raining hard outside, the kind of steady downpour that muffled the city noise into a low hum. Ethan shifted to grab the popcorn bowl, and his knee pressed into mine. He didn't move it. Neither did I. A loud crash of thunder made him glance at the window. They said the storm was supposed to get worse overnight, he said, his voice casual. I shrugged. I like storms. Makes the city feel smaller. He smirked, like he wasn't expecting that answer. You're weird, man. The lights flickered once, twice, then cut out completely. The room was swallowed in darkness, save for the pale glow of the streetlights bleeding through the curtains. Well, that's perfect, Ethan muttered, setting the popcorn down. Hope you don't freeze in that icebox you call a bedroom. My room's fine, I said, though I knew he was right. The old window frame in there didn't close all the way, and the wind could cut straight through. He stood, stretching lazily. Seriously, just crash in my room. It's warmer. I'm not going to let my roommate turn into an icicle. I hesitated. I'm good, really. Ethan gave me a look, half amusement, half challenge. Don't be stubborn. You'll thank me in the morning. I followed him down the short hallway, my pulse ticking faster than it should. His room smelled faintly of cedar and laundry detergent, the kind of scent that lingers without effort. The bed was wide, the blankets already rumpled from earlier. He tossed me a spare pillow and flopped onto his side without ceremony, reaching for his phone. Make yourself comfortable, he said, not looking up. I don't snore. Much. I slid under the covers, careful to keep space between us. Outside, the rain tapped against the glass in an unbroken rhythm. I could hear Ethan's slow breathing beside me, the faint rustle of him scrolling through something on his phone. I told myself it was just a place to sleep, nothing more. But in the dim light, with the warmth radiating from the side of bed, that promise felt suddenly fragile. The room was dim, lit only by the faint blue spill of light from Ethan's phone screen. I lay on my side, facing the wall, tried to ignore the awareness that every inch of space between us was occupied by warmth that wasn't mine. The steady sound of rain against the glass made the silence heavier, pressing in on every thought I didn't want to have. After a while, Ethan's voice broke through the quiet. You ever notice, he began lazily, how storms make people honest? I glanced over my shoulder. He was still looking at his phone, but there was a half-smile tugging at his mouth. Honest how? I asked. Don't know, he said. Something about being stuck inside, nowhere to go. It's like people drop their guard. He finally set the phone down and turned onto his back, one arm draped casually above his head. So, Tell me something you'd never admit on a normal night. It was a strange request, but Ethan had a way of making the oddest things sound harmless. I hesitated, choosing my words carefully. I don't think I'm that interesting. That's a cop-out. His tone was teasing, but his eyes were steady on mine now. Come on, I'll start. I'm not as put together as I look. I snorted. That's your big confession? He shrugged. Your turn. I didn't tell him the truth, that I'd spent weeks trying to ignore the way he made me feel, or that every small touch from him was a test I was bound to fail. Instead, I offered something safer, some half-truth about regretting a job I'd turned down years ago. He nodded like he understood, but there was something sharper in his gaze, like he knew I'd held back. Another flash of lightning lit the room, and when the thunder rolled in a second later, he shifted closer. You're cold, he said, his voice lower now. Before I could respond, his hand caught the edge of the blanket between us, pulling it up over my shoulders. His arm lingered there, brushing against me. I told myself it was nothing, just Ethan being Ethan. But the longer his arm stayed, the less it felt accidental. His breathing was slower, heavier, almost syncing with mine. You're warmer than I thought, he murmured, barely above the sound of the rain. The words settled in my chest like a weight, both grounding and dizzying. I turned slightly, just enough to see him better in the dimness. His face was closer than I'd realized, close enough that I could see the curve of his mouth, the faint shadow along his jaw. I don't think that's how temperature works, I said quietly, trying to keep it light. He smiled but didn't move away. Maybe not. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The space between us felt charged, like the air before lightning strikes. I could feel the heat radiating from him, the faint shift of the mattress when he adjusted, inching nearer. His knee brushed mine, and this time I knew it wasn't by accident. Ethan's hand slid over the blanket, resting near my side, not touching, but close enough that it felt like a decision waiting to be made. My pulse was loud in my ears, drowning out the rain. You're not going to run off to your icebox now, are you? He asked softly, the hint of a grin in his voice. No, I said, and it came out steadier than I expected. That was all it took. In the dark, he hooked his arm around me and pulled me against him, his body solid and warm against mine. It was sudden, but not rough, like he'd been thinking about it for longer than I had realized. My mind scrambled for meaning, for some explanation that didn't undo the version of Ethan I thought I knew. But all I could feel was the closeness, the way his hold tightened slightly as if to keep me there. He didn't say anything else, and neither did I. We stayed like that, pressed together in the dark, until the rhythm of his breathing slowed. I lay awake, staring at the shadows on the wall, wondering if I just stepped into something I wouldn't be able to step out of. I woke before the sun. The storm outside reduced to a gentle drizzle. Ethan's arm was still around me, heavy and warm, like it had been there all night. For a moment, I stayed perfectly still, afraid that moving would break the spell. Or worse, wake him and make him realize what he'd done. His breathing was slow, steady, the kind that comes with deep sleep. My head was angled just enough to see the sharp line of his jaw, the faint crease between his brows. He looked different without his usual guarded humor, softer, almost vulnerable. I should have slipped away then, retreated to my own bed, and pretended nothing had happened. But I didn't. Instead, I stayed, memorizing the weight of his arm, the subtle rise and fall of his chest. At some point, he stirred. His arm didn't fall away. Instead, it tightened. My breath caught. His eyes opened, hazy with sleep, and for a long second we just looked at each other. There was no confusion in his gaze, no startled flinch, just a quiet awareness. "Morning," he murmured, his voice low and rough from sleep. "Morning," I said, unsure if my voice sounded normal. He didn't move. If anything, his hand slid slightly along my side, the touch deliberate this time. It sent a current straight through me. "I've never done this before," he said, almost like a confession to himself. I searched his expression, looking for hesitation, for a sign that he regretted the night before. Instead, I saw something else, curiosity, maybe, or the beginning of a decision. "You don't have to," I began, but the words trailed off when he shifted closer, erasing the small gap between us. His forehead brushed mine, and then his lips were there, hesitant at first, as though testing the reality of it, then sure when I didn't pull away. The kiss was brief, but it carried the weight of everything unspoken between us. When he pulled back, there was a flicker of something in his eyes I couldn't name. He exhaled slowly, like the act itself had taken more out of him than he'd expected. "Guess I can't say never anymore," he said quietly, almost to himself. I didn't know what to say to that. My thoughts were tangled between the rush of the moment and the looming question of what it meant. I'd wanted this, maybe more than I'd admitted to myself, but now that it had happened, the reality was sharper, messier. We lay there for a while, neither speaking. Eventually, Ethan shifted away, not abruptly, but enough to signal a change. He sat up, rubbed the back of his neck, and muttered something about coffee. The absence of his warmth left a hollow space beside me. I stayed in bed, listening to the faint clatter of mugs in the kitchen, the hiss of the kettle. When I finally got up, he was at the counter, pouring coffee like it was any other morning. He slid a mug toward me, without looking up. "Black, right?" I nodded, wrapping my hands around the heat. The air between us felt different, denser somehow, but neither of us mentioned it. We talked about the weather, the power outage, the possibility of reheating last night's leftovers for breakfast. All the normal things, except now there was this undercurrent running through every word. At one point, he glanced at me, quick, almost cautious, and then looked away before I could read it. I didn't push. I wasn't sure I wanted an answer yet. By the time we sat down to eat, the rain had stopped and the city noises were seeping back into the windows. Life was resuming, as if nothing had happened. But something had, and we both knew it. I caught myself wondering if this was a one-time slip, a product of the storm and the dark and the warmth we'd shared, or if it was a start of something neither of us had planned for. Ethan didn't give any hint. He just passed me the salt, asked about my day, and smiled in that easy way he always did. But when his hand brushed mine on the table, neither of us moved it away.